Welcome to the Colombian Code, El Código Colombiano. Now, I've never really been one to gamble. Plus, I'm smart enough to know that all casinos are a racket. So if you ever find me in a casino, it's more than likely because I have some business there. And in today's episode, we're going to talk business. More specifically, we're going to discuss $1 billion steal. And what better place to talk about a steal than in a casino? Now, if you've ever been to Colombia, you're likely familiar with a brand called Frisby. And for those who don't know, Frisby, in comparison, would basically be the Colombian version of KFC or Popeyes. And it's one of the most popular and most recognized brands in the Colombian market. Just for some reference, we're talking about a company with over 280 stores across the country and upwards of around $250 million in annual revenue. So we're talking about $1 billion brand in what could be one of the biggest corporate steal and market grabs in history. So what do we know thus far? Frisby is a Colombian company that began in 1977 in Pereira. And an interesting fact, they actually started out selling pizzas. But that didn't go so well, so they switched over to fried chicken, and the rest, as they say, is history. So how do you steal $1 billion brand? Well, let's suppose you've built a successful branded business in Colombia. And one day, you discover that someone in another country has essentially created a replica of your brand with the same name, same logo, same color scheme, selling the same products. This is what we call brand theft. And it's essentially what we have happening in the case of Frisby Colombia. And I think it's important for the code disciples to know and understand so this doesn't happen to you. Now, it's important to note that trademarks and copyrights are territorial. Frisby is a registered brand or trademark in Colombia. They have what you call a registro de marca in Español. Now, in most countries, this registro de marca, or brand or trademark registration, is given on a first to file basis. Basically, whoever registers the brand first owns the rights to that brand. This is important to note because if you have a brand that's not registered and someone else comes along and registers the brand before you, they would own the rights to that brand in that market or territory. So what's to stop someone from saying, there's no Chick-fil-A in Spain, let's just open our own? Well, if they're not registered, then technically not much. This is why I stress to the code disciples the importance of protecting your brand by registering in all the countries and territories in which you operate and might think to expand to. And this is where things get a bit more complex. In the case of Frisby Colombia, a Spanish company apparently owned and operated by a group from Belgium recently filed to register the Frisby brand in Spain, which is part of the EU. Now, it seems Frisby Colombia actually registered the brand in Europe back in 2005. But it's not enough to just register your brand. You also have to actively use the brand to prevent others from petitioning to register your brand due to non-use or inactivity, as this is one of the ways in which brand theft can occur. As it currently stands, Frisby Colombia has a set time frame to demonstrate active use of their brand in the EU territory within the previous 5 years. Else, the rights to the Frisby brand in Europe will belong to the Spanish company that filed. Now, this certainly seems like a case that Frisby Colombia may very well lose due to inactivity. And we haven't heard much of anything from Frisby on this matter, which only makes you wonder what's going on with the management over there. On the other hand, the Spanish company made a very cunning, some may even say dirty, play in a move to acquire the rights to a billion-dollar brand in the EU. Now, as I see it, there are a number of ways this can play out. If I were running Frisby Colombia, perhaps the first thing I would do is investigate filing a lawsuit against the Spanish company for copyright infringement. Because while they may legally have the right to register the Frisby brand in Europe, the blatant plagiarism of Frisby Colombia's image and logo would certainly constitute copyright infringement. And since both Colombia and Spain are part of the Berne Convention, Spain would legally have to recognize a Colombian copyright without you having to register it in Spain. Frisby Colombia could also argue bad faith, claiming the Spanish company deliberately copied their image and logo, which the Spanish company openly admits to.
¿Quién levantó la mano y dijo, venga,
Tengo una idea.
tengo una idea? ¿Y si registramos una marca que es de otro país, que se la ideó otra persona en otro país, que pertenece a una marca ya establecida de otro país y hagamos una exactamente igual aquí en España? ¿A quién se le ocurrió? ¿A quién hay que pegarle el calvazo?
Y yo contacté Frisby Colombia, Frisby BIC, la empresa colombiana. Hablé con ellos
Sí.
durante meses.
Pero no llegaron a un acuerdo.
No, es que no llegamos a un acuerdo, es que no he tenido respuesta.
Ah, ok.
Entonces,
Pero al no tener respuesta, usted dice, bueno, me importa un carajo, yo sigo para adelante y registro la marca. Así sea exactamente igual.
sí, exactamente lo que pasó.
Since EU law explicitly refuses trademarks filed in bad faith, it would seem Frisby Colombia has moves they can make. But there's also another way this could play out, and the Spanish company has already alluded to it.
La ley española obliga a la parte que quiere demandar de ofrecer una negociación. Entonces hemos recibido un requerimiento formal de la contraparte, de la empresa colombiana, y vamos a hacer todo lo que está en nuestro poder para llegar a un acuerdo a donde los dos salen ganador de esta negociación.
O sea, Charles, que si en algún momento los de Frisby Colombia le dicen, venga, hermano, yo usted tiene todo registrado allá, véndame eso y yo empiezo a explotar el pollo de nosotros, el original, allá en España. Si llegaran a ese acuerdo, ¿de cuánta plata estamos hablando más o menos, Charles?
Eso, obviamente no voy a dar una figura exacta aquí en la radio, pero estamos hablando de millones de euros, obviamente.
Now, this previously happened to Apple in China with the iPad, where another company had already registered it, and it cost Apple $60 million to buy it back. A buyout in this scenario could land the Spanish company with a nice payday, as this appears to most certainly be a money grab. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and what moves Frisby Colombia ultimately decide to make. To the Code disciples, use this as a case study as to how and why you should protect your brands, because brand theft is a real thing. Remember, the Code disciples know better. So subscribe and follow the code. Till the next episode. Salud.